I always believed the end of a marriage would come like a storm, loud, messy, impossible to ignore. Mine ended with a tiny blue pill on the edge of the bathroom sink. It was early Saturday. Caroline had already left for her spin class. I was brushing my teeth when I saw it. A small pill, half hidden behind the soap dish. It wasn't aspirin or something for headaches. I recognized the shape. It was a birth control pill, which made no sense. I had a vasectomy 3 years ago, voluntarily. We agreed, 2 kids were enough, and I wanted Caroline to stop stressing over hormones and pills. She agreed, said she was relieved. So why was she back on the pill? I didn't confront her. Not yet. My engineering mind doesn't jump to conclusions. It calculates, measures, confirms. But something deep inside me cracked that morning, just a hairline fracture. It was the first tremor of the earthquake that would follow. Was she sick? Was there some medical reason she didn't tell me? Or was she hiding something? I took a photo of the pill. Then I flushed it. Not out of anger. Out of fear she'd realize I saw it. That night, when Caroline came home all smiles and sweaty, kissing me like everything was fine, I pretended too. But behind my smile was a storm building. I just didn't know yet how much I was about to lose. That weekend passed like any other. Pancakes with the kids. Netflix at night. Caroline texting someone, claiming it was her friend, Jenny, from work. I tried not to stare too long at the way her thumbs danced across the screen, or how her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't stop thinking about that pill. Monday morning, I sat at my desk in the home office and stared at my computer screen for over an hour. I didn't work. I just sat. The thoughts running through my head weren't about engineering projects or deadlines. They were about lies, secrets, patterns I had dismissed over the years. How many times had Caroline stayed late at work? How many times had she been too tired for intimacy? How many times had I been too trusting? I opened a browser and typed, "How to tell if your wife is cheating." It felt humiliating. I'm a systems engineer. I build complex networks, troubleshoot problems, and think logically. But this was chaos, emotion, fear. And yet, I kept reading. Then I went deeper. I ordered 2 home DNA testing kits. Not from some sketchy website. I went with a legitimate lab. They were discreet, reliable. 1 swab for me, 1 for each kid. I hated myself for even doing it. I loved those kids with everything I had. But I needed to know. The next day, I visited an electronics store and bought a few home security gadgets. Mini cameras, audio recorders, a GPS tracker for the car. Not because I was scared, because I was preparing for war. I didn't install anything right away. First, I needed help. Someone who knew my schedule. Someone I could trust. That's when I thought of Michelle. Michelle was my secretary, no, my executive assistant, for the last 5 years. She knew the ins and outs of my calendar better than I did. Efficient, blunt, and never one for small talk. But she was fiercely loyal. She'd covered for me during business trips, intercepted snoopy board members, and once even slapped a client who got handsy at a Christmas party. We weren't close, but I knew she could keep a secret. I asked her to meet me for coffee after work. She raised an eyebrow. "What's going on, Gary? You look like you haven't slept." "I need your help," I said. "But you have to promise me this stays between us." She crossed her arms. "If it's illegal, I don't want to know." "It's not," I said. "But it's personal. Very personal." That's when I told her about the pill, the DNA test, the weird texts. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just laid it all out like an equation that didn't quite add up. Michelle didn't interrupt. She just listened, her face unreadable. When I finished, she nodded once. "All right," she said. "Let's get to work." That moment changed everything. The hunt had begun. Michelle didn't waste time. The next day, she handed me a flash drive at the office. "Encrypted. Untraceable," she said. On it, a list of the best surveillance vendors in the state. "Avoid online purchases from your own IP or credit card. I suggest using cash and a burner phone." I blinked. "Have you done this before?" She smirked. "Let's just say I've helped a few people in messy exits." That was the first time I realized Michelle wasn't just an assistant. She was a fixer. The kind of person you'd want in your corner when your life starts to crumble. With her help, I bought the necessary gear under a different name. 2 high-quality motion-detecting cameras. One went in our bedroom air vent. The other, cleverly mounted behind the bookshelf in the living room. I installed a small voice recorder under the driver's seat in Caroline's SUV and a GPS tracker underneath the chassis. It felt wrong, like I was violating her privacy. But then I remembered, I had already been violated. If she was cheating, she had made the first move in this war. The hardest part was acting normal. Every morning, I made coffee for both of us. I helped the kids pack their backpacks. I kissed Caroline on the forehead before she left. But every gesture felt hollow, like I was playing a role in a play I didn't audition for. Every night, I copied the day's surveillance footage to a hidden hard drive I kept in my workshop. I would sit in my garage long after the kids were asleep, scrubbing through the recordings. Watching, listening. For days, nothing. Then, Thursday night, I hit something. I was reviewing the living room cam when I saw Caroline pacing back and forth while on a call. Her voice was clear enough, and what I heard sent a chill down my spine. No, I can't just leave him yet. He's suspicious. I found one of the pills I dropped. I think he saw it. Pause. No, I'll handle it. He's too soft to do anything crazy. She laughed. That laugh, God, it sliced through me. I didn't know who she was talking to yet, but that laugh confirmed everything. She was cheating. She was lying. And she thought I was weak. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to her, listening to her breathe, wondering how long she'd been laughing behind my back. The next morning, I picked up the DNA test kits that had arrived. I felt sick holding them. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to need to do this. But I did. I swabbed my own cheek, then carefully took samples from both of our kids' toothbrushes. It felt like betrayal, but not mine. Hers. When Caroline left for a business lunch that Saturday, I followed her. I stayed a few cars behind, tracking her with the GPS I had installed. She didn't go to any restaurant. She pulled into the parking garage of an office building I knew well. Wright Tech, her company. And the company's CEO, Bill Wright, was someone she had mentioned more than once. A mentor. A great boss. She stayed inside for over 4 hours. When she returned, her hair was different. Her lipstick was fresh. She had changed in the office bathroom. I knew then what she'd been doing. But I needed confirmation. So I went back that night and retrieved the GPS device. Then I checked the voice recorder. That's when I heard it, his voice. Next weekend. Tell him it's a retreat. I'll book the suite under another name. It was Bill. And the way he spoke to her, possessive, intimate, familiar, removed all doubt. Caroline wasn't just cheating. She was building a second life. The kids? I'd know soon enough. But now I had names, dates, evidence. I sent a copy of the audio to Michelle. She called me back 30 seconds later. We're past the point of no return, Gary. You sure you're ready? I looked at the photos, the footage, the files. I wasn't ready when I married her, I said. But I'm ready now. 2 days later, the results from the DNA lab arrived in a plain, unmarked envelope. I sat in the garage, the envelope trembling slightly in my hand as if it already knew what was inside. My heart pounded. I stared at the seal. This was it. The moment that would either let me breathe again or take the last piece of air out of my lungs. I opened it. 2 crisp documents, each one bearing the name of one of the children I had tucked into bed the night before. Each one comparing their DNA with mine. Each one stamped at the bottom with a cold, sterile line of truth. Probability of paternity, 0%. Both of them, 0. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the words. Minutes? Hours. My mind went numb. My whole identity, father, husband, provider, began to unravel like frayed rope. I remembered holding my son for the first time, tears on my cheeks, swearing I'd protect him with my life. I remembered brushing my daughter's hair into a ponytail for her first dance recital. I remembered Caroline's smile when she told me she was pregnant, with both of them. All lies. I wasn't their father. I was a placeholder. A fool who thought love could be trusted blindly. I wanted to scream, to break something. But instead, I called Michelle. She answered on the first ring. It's confirmed, I said. They're not mine. Silence. Then, I'm so sorry, Gary. I want to move forward. Full steam, I said, the numbness giving way to a white-hot clarity. No hesitation. I want to take everything from her. Everything. Then you need Lorraine, Michelle replied. Who's that? My best friend. Divorce attorney. Top 5 in the state. She's expensive, but surgical. You want a clean cut? She'll get them both legally. Set the meeting, I said. I want this to be over. The next day, I met Lorraine Bennett in a sleek glass office downtown. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She asked for facts. Names. Dates. Financials. Assets. Evidence. I gave her everything. Audio files, camera footage, GPS data, DNA tests. She reviewed it all in silence. Then she looked up and said one word. Brutal. Is that good or bad? I asked. For them. She smiled coldly. Very bad. She outlined my options. I could file quietly, citing irreconcilable differences. Walk away, let Caroline save face. Or I could go nuclear, paternity fraud, marital misconduct, punitive damages against both Caroline and Bill Wright. Will I win? I asked. You won't just win, Lorraine said. You'll make them regret ever underestimating you. The plan was simple. We'd start by protecting my assets, moving funds, restructuring the company under an LLC shielded from joint claims. Then we'd file, publicly, with media-ready documents. Enough to ruin reputations. But first, one more step. We had to bait Caroline into revealing more, on the record. Michelle suggested a weekend getaway. Tell her you want to reconnect. That you feel distant. She'll eat it up, she said. So I did. I booked a luxury cabin in the mountains and told her it was my attempt to save the marriage. She fell for it. Hook, line, and lipstick. As we packed for the weekend, Caroline kissed me like nothing was wrong. But I had packed more than just clothes. I had hidden audio recorders in the bedroom and bathroom of the cabin. A final trap. And when she called Bill that night, thinking I was asleep, I recorded every word. Every disgusting, vile word. She told him she was only playing nice to keep me off her trail. That she'd get his money and be free soon. That was the last piece. The match to light the whole fuse. You ready? Lorraine asked the next morning when I sent her the files. Oh, I'm ready, I said. And I was ready to watch her perfect world burn. The morning after the cabin trip, I woke up before Caroline and watched her sleep for what I hoped would be the last time. She looked peaceful, content. I wondered how someone could lie so easily, so often, and still sleep like a baby. I got out of bed, made coffee, and texted Lorraine one word. Now? She was already waiting. That afternoon, Caroline came home to find Lorraine and me sitting in the living room. Michelle was there too, standing silently by the window, arms crossed. Caroline looked confused at first, then annoyed. What's going on? I gestured to the folder on the coffee table. Open it. She looked at me, then at Lorraine. Is this some kind of intervention? No, Lorraine said. This is an execution. Caroline flinched, but she opened the folder. Inside, photos, printed messages, screenshots, audio transcripts, and the DNA test results. She flipped through them slowly. At first, her face was unreadable. Then her eyes widened. Her skin turned pale. You went through my phone, she whispered. You had a second phone, Caroline. I replied, voice low. I cloned it. I heard everything. She turned to Michelle, panic creeping into her voice. You knew about this? Michelle raised an eyebrow. Helped plan it. Caroline turned back to me, trying to salvage control. This is insane. You're spying on me like some lunatic. You've been lying to me for years. Sleeping with your boss. Passing off his kids as mine. I didn't even get a choice, Caroline. You stole that from me. They're still your children, she snapped. No, they're Bill Wright's. And I have the proof, I said, pointing to the DNA results. I was a donor, a caretaker, a fool, but not their father. Caroline started crying. Fake at first, then real, when she realized I wasn't backing down. I'll take the kids, she said. You can go. We'll figure this out. No, you won't take anything, Lorraine interrupted. You've committed paternity fraud. That's a felony in several jurisdictions. We've already started proceedings. You can't take my children away from me, she screamed. Lorraine didn't flinch. We're not. The court will. And since you're also being sued for marital misconduct, you'll be lucky if you're not paying him child support for someone else's kids. That broke her. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I stood. Pack your things. You can stay in the guest house for now. I want you out of the main house by tomorrow. Caroline looked up at me, stunned. You're serious? Deadly. Michelle walked with me to the door as Caroline cried in the background. She didn't see this coming, Michelle said. No, I replied. She thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd keep being the fool. Michelle put her hand on my shoulder. Not anymore. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom, watching the house fall silent. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without clenching my jaw. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The real war was just beginning. Monday morning hit like a sledgehammer, but this time, I was the one swinging it. Lorraine filed the paperwork just after 8 a.m. Divorce, paternity fraud, custody challenge, civil suit for emotional distress and financial damages. We weren't just aiming to sever ties. We were aiming to bury Caroline and her smug lover. By noon, her attorney, some overpriced family lawyer she probably found on Yelp, was calling Lorraine, begging for a meeting. We're not interested in meetings, Lorraine told him flatly over speakerphone. Tell Caroline she should have hired someone competent before she detonated her marriage. Michelle brought me coffee around 2 p.m. as I sat reviewing quarterly earnings for my company. She placed it down gently and sat in the chair across from me. She's spiraling, Michelle said. One of the teachers at the kids' school called. Caroline showed up crying in the parking lot, demanded to take them early. They refused. I nodded. She still thinks she's in control. She's not. Not anymore. Caroline wasn't just losing her marriage. She was losing her reputation, her financial stability, and the illusion she had built over the years. Every social connection we had shared began to dissolve. Friends stopped answering her calls. Words spread faster than fire. And the best part? We hadn't even hit the company yet. That was next. You see, Bill Wright, the man Caroline had been sleeping with, was her boss. CEO of Wright Tech, a company I used to admire. But Bill? He was reckless, arrogant, and, as Michelle discovered, sloppy with his digital footprint. He had used company resources, credit cards, hotel points, even his executive assistant, to cover his affair with Caroline. That meant one thing: corporate misconduct. Lorraine and Michelle worked together like a surgical team. Michelle combed through financial records and online breadcrumbs. Lorraine prepped the documents. By Wednesday, we had everything we needed to file a separate civil lawsuit against Wright Tech for enabling and financing an extramarital affair that had legal and emotional ramifications for me and potentially defrauded shareholders. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was corruption. That evening, I emailed Bill directly. No emotion, no threats, just a PDF copy of the lawsuit attached with a subject line that read, "You should have thought with your brain." 2 hours later, he called me. I didn't answer. Instead, I went out for drinks with Michelle and Lorraine. We toasted to the beginning of the end. "I give it 72 hours before the board pushes Bill out," Michelle said, sipping her whiskey. "The scandal's too big. Shareholders will panic." "I hope they bury him," I muttered. "They will," Lorraine said with a cold smile. "But first, he'll watch his entire empire crumble." As we laughed and planned our next moves, I noticed Michelle looking at me differently. Softer. Her usual edge was still there, but behind it was something else. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Respect. Maybe more. But I didn't dwell on it. Not yet. I was still burning the old house down. The rebuilding would come later. By Friday, the fire was raging. Wright Tech issued a bland press release that Mr. Wright would be stepping down indefinitely due to personal matters. Translation? He was forced out. The board acted swiftly, trying to sever the infected limb before the rot spread. But it was too late. The media picked up the story within hours. Some anonymous source, definitely not named Michelle, leaked the nature of the lawsuit to a tech insider blog. Suddenly, headlines read, "Wright Tech CEO accused of using company funds to finance affair with subordinate." Subordinate. That word hit Caroline like a slap in the face. Her social media accounts went dark. The retreat she had bragged about never happened. Instead, she was holed up in the guest house with a lawyer who couldn't keep up and a future collapsing faster than she could grasp it. And the kids? They were starting to notice. My son, James, called me dad a little less often. My daughter, Ellie, asked why mommy and daddy weren't eating dinner together anymore. I didn't lie, but I didn't give them the full truth either. "Mom and I are going through some hard changes," I said gently. "But I will always be here for you." I don't know what broke my heart more, the pain in their eyes or knowing they weren't mine. But I made a choice. I wouldn't punish them for their mother's sins. Meanwhile, Michelle remained by my side. She handled calls, arranged documents, and quietly screened every message from Caroline's camp. She stayed late in the office. Sometimes, we didn't even talk. We'd just sit in silence, working side by side. And in that silence, something shifted. One night, as I locked up the office, she lingered. "You're doing better than I thought you would," she said. I laughed bitterly. "I don't feel better." She hesitated, then added, "You're not the same man who walked into that coffee shop asking for help. You've changed, Gary." "Into what?" "Someone who finally knows what he deserves." The weight of her words settled over me like a blanket. Warm. Unexpected. Then her eyes softened. "Come out with me tomorrow night." "Like a date?" I asked, genuinely caught off guard. She shrugged. "Call it a victory lap. You're due for one." I nodded slowly. "Okay. Yeah, I think I'd like that." It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was a beginning, one that felt real. The next morning, Lorraine called. "Settlement proposal just came in from Caroline's attorney," she said. "They're offering to waive all support claims if you agree to joint custody and drop the fraud charges." I laughed out loud. They think I'm going to pay to let her walk away clean? Exactly, Lorraine said. That's why we're going to counter with scorched earth. I hung up and walked out onto my deck. The sky was gray, the house quiet. And yet, for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Caroline's legal team thought they were clever, offering a quick exit in exchange for silence. No alimony, no fraud charge, just joint custody and a quiet fade-out. But Lorraine didn't build her career by playing nice. We don't settle with liars, she said, scanning the proposal. We bury them. Our counterproposal was brutal. Full custody, no financial support from me, and a public acknowledgement of paternity fraud in exchange for not pressing criminal charges. Caroline's attorney nearly choked on the phone. You can't be serious. Oh, I am, Lorraine replied sweetly. We've already contacted the district attorney's office. They're very interested in a case like this. When Caroline received the counter, she showed up at the house unannounced. Michelle intercepted her on the porch, arms crossed. I just want to talk to him, Caroline pleaded. Michelle didn't budge. Then call your lawyer. Gary doesn't take surprise visits anymore. I lived in that house. And now you don't, Michelle said coldly. I watched from inside. I could have gone out there, but I didn't. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was a trespasser in the ruins she helped build. Eventually, Caroline left in tears. But they weren't the kind of tears that make you feel sorry. They were the kind of tears a thief cries after being caught. Later that week, we heard from Stephanie, Bill Wright's actual wife. Turns out, she'd seen the headlines. And when she did, she started digging. She'd suspected the affair for months, but didn't have proof. Now, thanks to us, she had a full dossier. She asked to meet. I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe outside of town. Stephanie was composed, graceful, and cold as ice. I want to thank you, she said. You've given me exactly what I needed. You're planning to divorce him? Already filed, she replied. And I'll be using the same strategy you did. Might even call Lorraine. I smiled. She'll like that. Stephanie's eyes narrowed. You know what the saddest part is? He's not even sorry. He thinks he's the victim. Just like your wife probably does. I nodded. Caroline hasn't said a single word of remorse. Just excuses. Stephanie leaned forward. You and I, we were collateral damage. But not anymore. We're the reckoning. We shook hands and parted ways. For the first time in this twisted saga, I felt less alone. Someone else had walked through the same fire and was emerging on the other side stronger. That night, Michelle picked me up for our victory lap. She wore a navy blue dress, hair down, confident, calm, radiant. We didn't talk much about the case, or Caroline, or Bill. We just talked about childhood, favorite movies, terrible bosses. And when the night ended, she didn't ask to come inside. She didn't kiss me, either. She just smiled. I'm proud of you, she said. That hit harder than anything, because I was finally proud of myself. I thought the worst was behind me. But life always reserves one final punch for the man who's finally standing tall again. It came on a quiet Wednesday evening. James, my son, biologically or not, was playing in the living room while I cooked dinner. Caroline had started sticking to her court-ordered visitation windows, picking up the kids every other weekend. The arrangement wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful enough. Until I heard something that stopped me cold. James was on a video call with someone. I peeked around the corner. The screen showed a grinning man in a golf shirt, tanned, silver-haired, and sickeningly familiar. Bill Wright. Hi, Daddy. James chirped. I showed Mommy my spelling test. She said you'd be so proud. I froze. Not just because he said Daddy, but because he didn't mean me. Bill smiled. I am proud, buddy. You're doing great. I walked over and gently took the tablet. James, I said calmly. Go wash up for dinner, all right? He nodded and skipped away, oblivious to the war about to begin. I stared at the screen. You called him without permission. Bill smirked. They miss me. Caroline lets them call. There's no court order saying they can't. I kept my voice level. You're not their father. You're not anything. Stay out of their lives. His smile faded. You should be thanking me. I gave them life. What did you give them? A lot. That was it. I hung up. Then I called Lorraine. She answered immediately. What's wrong? I told her what happened. This changes things, she said. We'll amend the custody order. No unsupervised digital contact. Period. He can't worm his way in through FaceTime. What if Caroline fights it? She won't, Lorraine said. Because the moment she tries to argue for Bill's involvement, we drop the full paternity fraud file on her desk and tell the court everything. That night, I sat on the deck with a drink in hand, the stars overhead sharp and quiet. I had been so focused on winning, on surviving, that I forgot how long the fallout lasts. The kids still saw Caroline as their mom. And Bill? Somehow, he was already trying to slip into the dad role. My role. Michelle joined me later, bringing her own drink. Heard about the video call, she said. Yeah, I replied. James called him daddy. Didn't even hesitate. Michelle was silent for a while. Then she said, he might not be yours by blood, but you're the one who stayed. The one who showed up. That matters more than DNA. I nodded, but it didn't make the sting go away. Do you ever feel like you did everything right and still lost? I asked. She looked at me, eyes soft. No, I think you're still winning. It just doesn't feel like it yet. That night, before I went to bed, I opened a blank journal and wrote a single sentence. I am not what she made me. I am what I choose next. I didn't know what that would be yet, but I was finally ready to find out. The next week, Caroline's attorney tried to push back, softly. They proposed structured digital communication between the kids and Bill, masked behind the phrase stability in relationships. Lorraine laughed when she read it. They're trying to normalize his role. Absolutely not. We filed for an emergency modification of the custody agreement, citing psychological impact, boundary violations, and paternity fraud as context. Lorraine didn't just win the hearing. She obliterated it. The judge barred any form of unsupervised communication between Bill and the kids, pending a full review. It was a huge win, but there was still one move left on the board, the lawsuit against Right Tech. Caroline had been terminated quietly weeks earlier, but the civil suit against the company was still active. Lorraine believed we could push for a settlement if we applied pressure, especially now that Bill had been publicly disgraced. Enter Stephanie, Lorraine said one morning. Stephanie, Bill's now ex-wife, had filed for divorce after our last meeting, but she hadn't gone quiet. In fact, she had found plenty of skeletons in Right Tech's corporate closets. Misused funds, falsified reports, favoritism, all buried in years of expense sheets and HR records. We met again. This time, all four of us, me, Michelle, Lorraine, and Stephanie. It was strange, sitting across from someone who had been betrayed in an almost identical fashion. There was a silent understanding between us. Not warmth, but something stronger, alliance. Stephanie slid a USB drive across the table. This is everything. Internal memos, charges on corporate cards, travel receipts linked to your wife. Lorraine plugged it into her laptop. Her eyes lit up. You just gave us leverage. Stephanie smiled. I don't want money. I want him ruined. You handle the legal part. I'll handle the press. It was almost surgical from that point on. The very next week, Lorraine contacted Right Tech's legal team with an ultimatum. Settle privately, or we go public, with Stephanie backing every claim. They folded. Quickly. The settlement wasn't astronomical, but it was enough to cover legal fees, therapy for the kids, and a clean restart for me. More importantly, the agreement forced Right Tech to publicly admit inappropriate conduct between a senior executive and an employee, a nail in Bill's professional coffin. With that, it was over. The war I never asked for was finally behind me. But the void it left? That was something else entirely. I stood in the empty guest room, once Caroline's prison of silence, now cleared out, and realized I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. There's a difference. That night, I took Michelle to dinner again. This time, there were no unspoken boundaries. No hesitation. She sat closer. Our hands brushed. We laughed, not to hide pain, but because we were actually happy. Halfway through the meal, I said, thank you. For all of it. She looked me in the eye. I didn't just do it for you, Gary. I did it because I believed in you. For a moment, I couldn't speak, because no one had said that to me in years. I reached across the table and took her hand. Then maybe it's time I start believing in something again too. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. A month passed. Fast, quiet, and strange. Without the daily chaos of court filings, lawyer meetings, and emotional ambushes, I didn't quite know what to do with the silence. But I didn't hate it. Not anymore. The kids had adjusted surprisingly well. Caroline's visits were supervised and minimal. She tried to file for increased custody once. Lorraine shut it down in less than 48 hours. James and Ellie no longer asked to call Bill. James still sometimes called me Gary, especially when he was upset. But he always circled back to Dad by bedtime. I never corrected him. I just kept showing up. Every morning. Every night. Because parenting, I was learning, wasn't about biology, it was about consistency. And love. Michelle had become more than just part of my recovery. She was part of my life. We didn't rush into anything. We took walks, talked about everything except Caroline. We had dinners. She met the kids, slowly, carefully. James liked her right away. Ellie took longer, but warmed to her when Michelle helped her build a school project volcano that actually erupted. One night, after the kids had gone to sleep, Michelle and I sat on the couch with wine and no TV. I read your journal, she said suddenly, glancing at the black notebook on my coffee table. You snooped? I asked with a mock frown. It was open to the page, she smirked. I didn't snoop. I observed. I chuckled. What did you think? She picked it up and read aloud. I am not what she made me. I am what I choose next. I think that's one of the bravest things anyone can write after what you went through, she said softly. And I think, maybe it's time you choose forward. I nodded. The next day, I made changes. I updated my will, rewrote the trust, removed Caroline's name from everything, added a clause that clarified my wishes for the kids, should anything happen to me, regardless of biology. Then I met with Robert, my old friend and business partner, who had kept his distance during the storm but never truly left. We had coffee. He apologized for not being more involved. I didn't know what to say, man. You were always the rock. Watching you break, it scared me. I wasn't broken, I told him. I was being rebuilt. He leaned back. So what now? I build something better. And I meant it. Not out of revenge. Not out of bitterness. Out of clarity. Michelle and I started sketching out something new. An idea for a nonprofit that would provide legal aid and emotional support for men who had been blindsided by betrayal, paternity fraud, or manipulative divorces. She had the organizational skills. I had the funding. We called it Second Draft, because that's what life was offering me. Not a rewrite, just a chance to turn the page. And for once, I was ready to write something beautiful. Just when you think the past is buried, it knocks on your door. Literally. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. The kids were doing homework. Michelle was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, wearing my hoodie, humming something off-key but beautiful. And then, a knock. Not the kind neighbors use. The kind the past makes when it's desperate. I opened the door, and there she was. Caroline. She looked drained. Eyes puffy, makeup smeared, hair tied up in a bun like she didn't care what I thought anymore. For once, she didn't have her performance face on. Gary, she said, her voice hoarse. I didn't invite her in. I didn't speak. Just waited. I know I have no right, she began. But I didn't know where else to go. That's a problem of your own making, I replied. She wiped her cheek. Bill's gone. Moved to Arizona. I haven't heard from him in weeks. He changed his number. I waited for her to get to the point. I wasn't going to rescue her. Not this time. Not ever again. I lost everything, Gary, she whispered. My job. My reputation. The house I rented. I had to break the lease. I glanced behind me at Michelle, who was now peeking out of the kitchen with quiet steel in her eyes. I don't know what you want from me, Caroline. Caroline stepped forward, clutching herself. I want to apologize. I said nothing. I know sorry means nothing. But I need you to know, I wasn't just using you. Not at the beginning. You were good to me. Better than I deserved. Then why? I asked. Finally, why do all of it? The lying? The pills? The second phone? The kids? She looked away. Because I was bored. Because I hated myself. Because I thought I deserved more. I don't know. Silence stretched between us. And then, the most unexpected words from her lips. Michelle's good for you. I see that. I said nothing. Caroline straightened. I'm leaving town. Probably for good. I signed the papers Lorraine sent. No more fights. Just take care of them. Of our kids. They're not our kids, I said. Not to be cruel. Just to be honest. Her face twisted for a moment, but she nodded. Then she handed me an envelope. I wrote something to each of them. Please, give it to them when you think it's right. I took it without replying. And then she was gone. Like a ghost that had finally accepted its haunting was over. I stood in the doorway for a while, listening to the rain. Then Michelle walked over and gently closed the door behind me. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. That's all right, she said. You don't have to be. Not tonight. We stood there for a long time, her hand on my chest, mine still holding that envelope like it might bite. Because healing isn't a straight line. It's a loop, one you revisit sometimes. But with less pain every time around. And tonight, I wasn't bleeding. I was just remembering. Weeks passed, and true to her word, Caroline disappeared. No calls. No texts. No sudden attempts to reclaim lost ground. The legal settlement was finalized. She relinquished all claims. No alimony. No financial support. not even partial custody. She had visitation rights under supervision and nothing more. I never thought it would end with silence. I expected a war. But sometimes, even hurricanes burn out when they run out of ocean. Michelle and I grew closer, not out of trauma bonding or proximity, but because we chose each other, day by day. She wasn't a rebound. She was a revelation. She saw the broken, rusted parts of me and didn't try to fix them. She respected them and helped me rebuild around them. One Friday night, as we walked through the quiet park near my house, James and Ellie riding their bikes just ahead of us, Michelle slipped her hand into mine. "You're different now," she said. "Worse," I teased. "Stronger," she replied. "You're not trying to prove anything anymore." I thought about that. It was true. I wasn't performing fatherhood to meet someone's expectations. I wasn't chasing revenge or justice anymore. I was present. I was grounded. At home, after the kids went to sleep, I opened the envelope Caroline had left behind. 2 letters. One for James. One for Ellie. They weren't perfect. They didn't erase anything. But they were honest. More honest than she had been in years. She apologized for lying, for hurting me, and for not being brave enough to face the truth. She said goodbye in a way that felt final. I placed the letters in a small safe. I'd give them to the kids when they were older, when they could understand without letting it define them. The next morning, I did something unexpected. I booked a week-long trip to the coast. Just me, the kids, and Michelle. No courtrooms. No documents. Just waves, sand, and time. That trip became something sacred. James asked to call me Dad again, just before bedtime, after I helped him dig the world's most pitiful sandcastle. Ellie held Michelle's hand the whole day we visited the aquarium. I sat on the balcony of our rented cottage that night, watching the stars, as Michelle leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of what?" she asked. "That this peace won't last." She was quiet for a long moment, then said something I'll never forget. "Peace doesn't last, but neither does chaos. What matters is who you are between the storms." I closed my eyes and let those words settle into my bones. She was right. The storm had passed, but I was no longer the man who was swept away by it. I was the man who stood through it and came out with something stronger than victory. Clarity, purpose, and maybe love. A year to the day since I found that single birth control pill on the edge of the sink, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror again. But this time, I wasn't looking for lies. I was just brushing my teeth, getting ready for a normal day. The kids were still asleep. Michelle was in the kitchen packing school lunches, something she had started doing without being asked, without obligation, simply because she loved them. And because she loved me. We weren't married. Not yet. But we were building something stronger than rings and vows. A life earned through truth, not illusion. Later that morning, I dropped James and Ellie off at school. As they ran inside, James turned back and yelled, "Love you, Dad." Dad. Not Gary. Not anything else. Just Dad. It hit me harder than the court rulings, the DNA results, the lawsuits combined. I wasn't their biological father, but I was their father. By choice. By presence. By love. At work, things had settled. Second Draft, our nonprofit, was gaining traction. We had helped 24 men already, offering legal counsel, mental health support, and, more importantly, a voice. A space to say, "I'm not okay," without being dismissed as weak. Michelle sat beside me in the office that afternoon, flipping through donor letters. "You ever think back to that first conversation we had?" she asked. "The coffee shop?" She nodded. "You were pale, scared, angry, and too polite to admit any of it." "I remember. And now look at you," she smiled. "You took back your life." I leaned back in my chair, let her words wash over me. "Not just mine," I said. "I built something new, one that she can't touch anymore." Michelle reached over, squeezed my hand. "And you did it. With your own hands." That evening, the 4 of us had dinner, taco night, as per Ellie's request. No drama, no tension. Just music in the background, bad jokes, and too much sour cream. Later, as I tucked the kids into bed, Ellie looked up and asked, "Will Michelle always live with us now?" I smiled. "Would you be okay with that?" She nodded sleepily. "She makes you smile like you used to." Out of the mouths of children. After they were asleep, I stepped out to the porch and looked at the stars. No guilt, no rage, just a steady calm. I had lost everything I thought defined me. My wife, my children, my certainty. But in the ashes, I found something else. Myself. This wasn't a revenge story. It was a resurrection. Caroline was gone. Bill was forgotten. Their chapter closed. And me? I chose to be the man who stood back up. The man who didn't let betrayal define him. The man who wrote his second draft better than his first. Betrayal doesn't end you. It reveals you. And what you do next, how you rise from it, can be the beginning of a life that's finally yours. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more gripping tales of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. Your support helps us keep sharing powerful stories like this.